chips can go on the table in the middle. Yeah, that's perfect.
It's a microphone too. Why not? Hey, I'm all for kumbaya compared to what the alternatives have been lately, right?
Is there a seat available? Anybody?
Oh, tomorrow we just have round table, that's it.
Tomorrow, yeah.
And then, are we having a, is there a, chief, is there a meet the firemen or something at City Hall on Thursday?
Yeah, there's, so.
Technically, I'm still both jobs,
Chiefs,
but
new command
what
staff
you need.
and inspectors are meeting.
out there?
if you put what?
You still want a few months
Planning
taken
and
out there?
building
The
The flannel
pizza or sandwiches, whatever you
Kinda.
order.
Okay, we'll put it.
it's a cool looking plant.
We'll put it there. I was more of like.
That's nice of you to remember. I wasn't gonna say
Every day.
anything. It's really nice of you to remember that though. Thank you.
New inspectors that are gonna be working at Carmel, just trying to get check this out. Gracious, close, all of it together.
Okay.
It's a good way to get it.
At 11:30? 11:30?
I don't know, I think so. Yeah, 11:30. With lunch.
You're not on Zoom this time. I'm saying you're not in the. I can't give you shit about not speaking on Zoom this time.
Committee, and that way we have it recorded and we check the box that we talked about last time.
And then I thought I would comment on chips socks.
Yeah, yeah, wore these with the Jimmy Panetta, Mayor Potter, State of the City last week, and I got best socks. That was the award.
Yeah,
Hi, Chief.
definitely deserve awards.
Good to see you.
A lot of Chiefs in here.
This
This is
is
one time you can get away with saying that.
Oh, too many Chiefs in the room. The freaky thing is when you do those, when we do police swearing in, and there's just so many people in that house. It's just like, oof. Safest place in the universe.
All right, so we get started.
Council members, are you ready to receive the presentation?
Okay. Chief, please use the mic. You can grab that wireless microphone if you want. I mean, the clicker will work from your seat if you wanted to sit there and talk. It's up to you.
I think it'll be. How do I know if it's working?
Talking to it.
Test, test, test. Thank you. Okay, we're going to do a quick review of the Ambulance Ad Hoc Committee. I think I'll sit here. Kind of used to doing council presentations, so I'm going to do a hybrid of that. This is a review of the Ad Hoc Committee that started in 2020. We're going to review, for today, we're going to provide an overview of that ad hoc work since 2020, and then receive public input and answer any questions that come up. And then we're going to provide recommendations from the ad hoc moving forward. We want to start off with a little bit of history. And if you're on the ad hoc, you already know all this because you went through it. But essentially in 1915, we started our fire service. In 1916, we started police services in Carmel-by-the-Sea. Then in 1936, Carmel begins its own ambulance service. In 1990, the city entered into a JPA with Carmel Regional Fire Ambulance, the CRFA. Many people will probably remember that. And that lasted until 2000. I didn't do anything.
Chief, can you say what JPA is for people that
Yes.
don't know?
Okay, thanks. So the podium mic doesn't work?
It does, but you'll have your back to everybody.
Not that that would be impolite or anything.
We do it for every meeting, but except the cameras.
That was pretty good. Do that blindfold, isn't he?
That was great.
Military.
So again, going back, in 1990, the city entered into a JPA, which is a Joint Powers Authority, with Carmel Regional Fire, and we joined the Carmel Regional Fire Ambulance Authority, which is known as the CRFA. That lasted for exactly, is that 21 years? Till 2011. In 2009, the city was notified that that JPA was going to dissolve, and that gave us 2 years to figure out what we were going to do with the ambulance and our ambulance. At the same time, on December 31st, 2011, the city began its contracted fire services with Monterey Fire to take over our fire services for the city, and we took on our own ambulance. That meant we became the employers for 6 fire ambulance employees, and each of those employees went through the Monterey Fire Academy to be firefighters and worked as paramedics providing ambulance services for the community. So in 2011, we were able to continue our paramedic services. In 2019, Monterey Fire begins providing its own paramedic services. There's 2 asterisks right up there. You're going to see what those are all about coming up. But that's an important date. That's when Monterey became paramedic service providers through the county, and they adopted their own paramedicine service, meaning they could have a paramedic working off of an ambulance. Working off of a fire engine. In 2020, the city council appoints an ad hoc committee comprised of council members Bobby Richards and Carrie Tice, and that was to explore improving management operations for the ambulance. As you'll see, the ambulance is managed under my direction as the Director of Public Safety, and we want to look at how do we manage it better, and I'll explain that a little bit more coming up. In 2021, the ad hoc makes a recommendation to explore contracting the ambulance services with Monterey, providing identified goals are achieved that the ad hoc committee, comprised of our council members and community members, came up with, and we'll go over what those are. In 2022, Councilmember Jeff Barron replaces Councilmember Tice on the ad hoc team. And then 2022, through recommendations by the ad hoc, we began negotiating with Monterey for contract ambulance services. We got a little sidetracked as the Joint Powers Authority came up again as something to explore for our fire services, and that stalled those talks. So today we're refreshing what we already accomplished all the way up to 2022 and put on hold for the last 2 years. Here we are, 2024, we've reconvened. I'm back with the city as the police chief, and we have Chief Miller, who's back with Monterey, who was the architect of the Monterey contract, starting fire services for the city in 2011 when we took over that. All right, why are we doing this? Here's our management structure currently, and this is from 2011 until 2019. You have the Director of Public Safety at the top, which is myself. I oversee the police department. I also oversee our 6 employees, which are our Carmel Fire ambulance employees. We have Monterey Fire, who we contract with for some administrative responsibility over the firefighter ambulance personnel, our personnel. There's things in the fire service that I have no idea. And it wouldn't be responsible for me to oversee a fire department. So in our contract for fire services, Monterey provides that for us. Because we are also paramedic service providers, the county oversees our operation as well. There are things we have to do with our ambulance and our paramedics to maintain our ability to have an ambulance in this city, and the county oversees our operation as well. So you have 3 different people managing 6 employees. This is where we got to when we decided to start having this conversation as to who's overseeing our ambulance services and how do we do it better. Pay attention, this will change quickly. There's that double asterisk I was talking about. In 2019, Monterey Fire begins providing paramedic services, meaning they have firefighters who are equally trained in paramedicine as our 6 employees are who operate the ambulance. So they could put a paramedic on a fire engine. That means they are also under the management of the county to maintain their paramedicine license. So now we have redundancy right there. And now you have more management. So how do we clean that up? Well, the proposal through the ad hoc is that let's take a look at this model, where the Director of Public Safety oversees the police department and then oversees a contract with Monterey Fire, as I do now, to oversee the Monterey Fire services, but we add the ambulance service in there as well. Then you only have Monterey County EMS overseeing Monterey with their paramedicine. A lot less management, a lot cleaner, a lot easier. So back in 2020 and 21, when we sat down with the ad hoc and our wonderful community members, we put them to school. I think somebody said it felt like a college course, learning fire services and ambulance services and the management of it. This binder, we all remember, is full of contracts, full of definitions, full of explanations on everything that we have to deal with in this service to help you get a better understanding of what we're dealing with here and what we're trying to improve. We also learned about the laws pertaining to ambulance, which a lot of people will refer to as 201 rights. And 201 rights are actually EMS law federal law that came into effect in 1980 to regulate paramedicine services and ambulance services. As most of us know, the county provides that service, and they are authorized to do that. But in 1980, a law came out that said you will all follow the county. They're going to regulate you. They're going to manage you, is what we just saw. If at any time you don't want to do it and you want to relinquish your ambulance services, you can by letter. You just tell the county we don't want to do it anymore. They'll come in and they'll continue to provide services for you. We've been fortunate enough to maintain our ambulance service, which means a better response time, better customer service for our community. So we learned about responsibility and management, identifying the challenges with the current setup, which I just showed you some of, And then we tasked you with searching for opportunities for improvement and stability. I think, as we all know, your director of public safety isn't a lifetime assignment. And if I leave, you're going to look for somebody to manage your police department and your ambulance services. And that's a hard task to do. So that was something we looked at. All right, the ad hoc, after several meetings, came up with specific goals for us to follow. One was to make sure the city of Carmel-by-the-Sea maintains that 201 right. That right for us to maintain an ambulance in this community, because that's most important. We don't want to lose our ambulance. Goal 2 was to improve our paramedic response time in Carmel-by-the-Sea. Through all these sessions and through this study, we determined that 15 to 20% of our own ambulance calls for service in our city are handled by AMR. Well, why is that? It could be our ambulance is on another call inside the city and they can't respond. It also could be that we're outside our city limits responding to a county call because we entered into an agreement with the county to provide mutual aid outside of our city as the closest responding ambulance. We're connected with the county system. We operate with them. They dispatch us. We don't dispatch our own ambulance. Or the ambulance is unable to respond. Maybe it's broken down. Maybe we don't have staffing and we can't have our ambulance operating. So in 2020, we looked at that number, and 62 residents, or 62 Code 3 calls for service in our city were handled by AMR. That was the 20% out of 383 calls. How do we improve that? Goal 3 was we wanted to make sure we take into consideration the stakeholders. Any decision we make here impacts county residents because of that mutual aid. It impacts our partners, like Carmel Valley Regional, who has their own ambulance as well, and AMR. We don't want to disrupt a system that's working already, so that's important. And then make sure we maintain those mutual aid agreements and our paramedic service provider agreement through the county. Goal 4, how do we reduce redundancies, conflicts, and improve efficiencies between the operations? We currently have a firehouse that has Monterey employees operating our fire equipment and providing services here, along with Carmel employees who operate as firefighters and paramedics, living in the same house. Management, that's a challenge. It has been since 2011. In fact, in 2011, we had discussed, and Chief, back me up on this if I'm wrong, we discussed the ambulance operation with an eventual goal of having them be a part of this contract, but that just didn't happen over the years. And it became available in 2019 with the paramedicine being provided by Monterey. And then identify areas where Monterey can expand upon existing agreement to manage our ambulance services, and consider contracting ambulance services with Monterey Fire. Those were the goals set up by our ad hoc in 2021 moving forward. So in 2022, and I wasn't here, so Chip, if I'm incorrect, correct me, we presented this to council with an option for you to start exploring what a contract would look like with Monterey to run our ambulance services for the city. During those first meetings with Monterey, it turned into a discussion about a joint powers authority for us to enter into a larger scheme where fire ambulance is managed as a joint powers authority. We know that that would take several years to implement, and we're looking for something that we could do now with the eventuality of maybe doing a joint powers authority with Monterey and the other cities involved in the contract. But for now, we're looking for an agreement to have a contract to provide ambulance services along with our fire services in the city of Carmel-by-the-Sea. And that's where we're at with the recommendations.
Great job, Chief.
Thank you. I thought there'd be a lot of questions on this, and I can answer questions as we go along. Dale.
Brandon, can you back up 2 slides? Yeah, let's get Dale on mic so people can.
Yep. You want here?
Could you define the difference?
Sebastian, will you put the slides back up, please?
Could you define the difference between number 2 and 3 on that slide?
Thanks. So the question is, can we define the difference between 1 and 2? 1 is reduce redundancies, conflicts, and improve efficiencies between operations.
2 and 3.
Oh, I'm sorry, 2 and 3. Identify areas where Monterey can expand upon an existing agreement to manage our ambulance services. We already pay Monterey to do some of the management of our ambulance employees, including training and station management. That's part of it because we're not there and we don't understand the fire world, and that's what we pay Monterey to do as a part of the existing contract. And then consider contracting ambulance services with Monterey. That's expanding that management that we already pay for into overseeing the entire operation. It's actually going to be to have those employees become Monterey employees and not continually, manage the ambulance and the paramedicine services.
So if you pick 3, 2 just goes away.
Correct, yeah. Yeah, yep. Thank you.
I just want to add a comment. Oh, sorry. It may be self-evident, but part of the intent in number 1 of goal 4, reduce redundancies, conflicts, and improve efficiencies between the operations, it's also to look at how we can manage costs more effectively without negatively impacting the quality of service to residents.
Correct. I would go one step farther.
Yep, go ahead.
If I may. Thank you, Molly. I'd go one step farther, which is actually to enhance the service. And so the model that Chief Miller and Chief Moore and Chief Tomasi have talked about is always having a paramedic riding on the fire engine. So again, I mean, right now what happens is when our ambulance rolls with 2 paramedics, we're also getting 3 firefighters going. And they're all EMTs, but they're not necessarily that higher level of advanced life support. So the model that the chiefs have built would require that there be a paramedic riding on what is our engine, but it's still a City of Monterey employee. And, another part of it, again, and we'll talk about this, we're having a luncheon with some of the chief's new staff, and just to relationship build, is because it's not, this is our fire department, and we talked about this a lot during the ad hoc meetings. It's not like it's a separate entity. These are our, it's one family that we're working with. So again, I think that there are the model that they've envisioned will actually make our village safer. Because again, if you're getting a fire engine and an ambulance, both of whom have a paramedic on it, and then you get that subsequent call, you're not relying on AMR, you're not relying on outside services. You can perhaps peel off one of those vehicles, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, and deal with the new emergency, the new medical emergency or accident or whatever we need. So
I'll expand on that a little bit as well. With the model that we may be able to come up with having a paramedic maybe on the fire engine and one in the ambulance, again, every medical call in this city has a fire truck rolling to it and an ambulance. If our ambulance isn't in the city because we are part of a mutual aid agreement, you still have a paramedic going to your door. And when we talk about minutes matter, our response time for our fire department is 3 minutes in the city on average. If you are relying on AMR to provide you a paramedic service, it's probably 6 to 9 minutes. That's a big difference.
What's the sweet spot, Chief?
Well, anyway, 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's when you get brain dead.
It starts becoming irreversible after about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It just says that, brain death starts happening after 5 minutes, and the chance for a patient to survive starts significantly going downhill. And just one other point I was going to say is, just to be clear too, how many times was the ambulance out of the city, you said earlier?
15 to 20%.
So that 20% of the times that ambulance is out of the city, currently, when that happens, there's no paramedic in the city until AMR ambulance responds. And you don't know where they're coming from, because they're in a system status. They could be drawn down, and sometimes we get ambulances coming from Marina, so you just never know.
Any other questions? Anybody online? We want to make sure we cover everything, so if we can think of those questions that'll come up. You have a number of questions that might come up, I think, that we could answer. Dale?
I didn't see the outline. I got here a couple minutes late. Are you going to go through the financial implications of this? Like how much does it cost to have a paramedic on a fire truck that we currently don't have? It sounds like a great idea, though.
Go through it with council.
Yeah, that would be the recommendation, is to start that process and then present that to council, what that looks like.
Thank you. My understanding is that right now, all of the firefighters on the Monterey Force are not paramedics, but that will increase moving forward. Yeah, is that correct?
Well, yes.
Well, if you're going to elaborate, I'll pass you the mic, sir.
Yeah, no, sorry. It's not every single firefighter in the city of Monterey is a paramedic, but we have, I think, 22 or 23 paramedics currently in the system. And then if we're getting ready to hire about 10 firefighters right now, so we'll pick up some more paramedics there. We're looking at sending more of the firefighters to paramedic school, so we should have more than enough to provide the Carmel engine paramedic. But you got to remember too, the 6 paramedics that you already that are Carmel employees today, those paramedics will be coming into the system, right? So that would be 6 more right off the bat, for the ambulance and for the engine, if you're going to staff it that way.
Right, so we're going in the same direction, because I'm just wondering, to what extent are we guaranteed that we're going to have a paramedic arriving for Monterey needs? And, considering that they're coming from the general Monterey Force. So that's something that we're aiming for. Probably won't be 100%, but a fairly high percentage of times there will be a paramedic.
If we staff the Carmel engine as a paramedic engine, that'll be the minimum staffing on that engine. Meaning, if one of the paramedics calls in sick or something happens, it's like we don't shut the engines down ever. And we do the same for the ambulance too. So there would always be a paramedic on the engine. Once it's minimum staffed as a paramedic engine, then there will always be a paramedic on the engine. Now, there might be a time when someone goes home sick, we got to get another paramedic to come cover. But as far as that engine goes, we're not going to have days, well, no paramedic, we're not going to staff. We'll staff that engine with our staffing levels to make sure there's a paramedic on that engine every single day in Carmel.
Chief, just one other comment. That will be a recommended contract requirement, Molly. So that will be something that we'll build into the contract with the city of Monterey. And and then, the chiefs are envisioning having 100 firefighters. And if you think about 30 of them, a full third of his force will be, again, that higher level of life-saving at the paramedicine level. I don't think she was done, sir. I'm sorry.
Sorry, long-winded. So just knowing that sometimes the Carmel engine will go elsewhere because the need is elsewhere. I'm thinking about that too, right? We won't always have the Carmel engine in Carmel. So I'm doing that calculation around how many paramedics are on the Monterey Force that would be available if another engine comes in to serve this community. The priority, what I hear you saying, Chip, is the priority is going to be whatever engine comes here to serve this community, it's going to be a contractual priority to have a paramedic on that engine.
Yes, that's correct, and the chief can explain it a lot better. But I think of it kind of like an organism, right? Again, something happens on part of us, one of the cells in our body, and it gets attacked by a Monterey fire. And so, but there are resources that are brought up. So the system that they have in place is that anytime our engine rolls, or anytime there's an emergency within the organism, the system, they move resources. And so the requirement would be, again, when our engine or our ambulance are out, we're ensured that whatever resources come to our station will have that paramedic on board. Sorry.
Is this concept new, novel, widely used, best practice? How would you define it?
Been going on since emergency.
Yeah, I would say definitely a best practice standard in the industry.
And we just have been behind a little bit?
Well, you've had your paramedics on your ambulance, so that's kind of how you've been filling your paramedic void for the city. The other part that wasn't brought up too, is right now, I don't know, I don't have the stats, but how many times that the ambulance shuts down because they can't staff it. Because you only have 6 employees, 5 currently, but you only have 6 employees trying to staff an ambulance 24/7, 365 days a year. Now imagine those 6 employees, right? Someone's sick, someone gets COVID, whatever the reasons, someone, breaks an arm or something, then the other employees have to pick all that up. Now Monterey helps when they can, but it's not a contractual thing. It's just something we do to try to keep your ambulance. Like the other day, it happened. So in the Monterey system, we don't just put engines out of service because we can't staff them. We'll hold crews. We'll mandatory force back to keep our staff, our engines 24/7 staffed. And we would do the same with the ambulance. So if somebody woke up in the morning, and the other person coming in was sick, and the person wanted to go home, we would force them to stay. It's part of their labor agreement. They would stay. They get paid overtime, but they would stay just to make sure that ambulance never gets shut down.
I think that's a really good point that I want everybody else to hear, but also maybe you could explain, Chief, there is a bit of a cost savings with this if our ambulance runs with the paramedic and an EMT instead of 2 paramedics. So it could be a cost savings there, correct?
It depends what the contract looks like. Yeah, you're still paying for the 2 paramedics, 1 on the engine.
Okay, so there is no cost savings with having an ambulance run with the paramedic and an EMT?
We're going to save it overtime.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay.
I think one of the questions we heard the most over the last 4 years was, if we enter into an agreement with Monterey, are we going to lose our ability to have an ambulance? And that's an important thing. That's the 201 right we were talking about. We know with the county that we will not lose our ambulance. It will be housed here in Carmel, just like our fire engine, and respond from our fire station with the employees, and we won't lose our ability. The county will not come to us and say, you violated section 201 of the EMS code, which is SB 125, and you're going to lose your ambulance. We already checked that. We won't. We can maintain our ambulance. And if we at some point decide we do not want to contract with Monterey anymore, we can take the ambulance back and staff it and house it here and have our own employees run it. That was what people were screaming in 2020 and 2021, but that's not the case. We checked that, so we're fine.
No, I think it'd be
Chief. Yes, thanks, Chief. The other thing with the ambulance is it does generate revenue. We do get transport fees that we collect through a company. We have an outside vendor that collects and then gives us the money. Whatever contract we come up with, the revenue would stay with the city of Carmel, and we would pay for the contract services. So we'd still manage that part of the service. Yes.
So one other item we talked about on the committee was the importance of the education of the community and Carmel businesses around fire prevention. And so I'm sure that that's going to be included in the contract as well, but that was something that was really important in light, especially in light of the fires that we've had in the past few years, that be, an important service provided by Monterey in the contract as well.
Yes, ma'am, and that's in the current contract, and actually Chief Miller is presenting on what I call the SWIP, the Community Wildfire Prevention Plan, on the 1st of June at Sunset Center as part of our efforts for preparedness. And then that document will go to the City Council for adoption. I believe we're in July, Brandon. And again, I was saying that we're meeting his new staff with our staff. Well, the staffs are having a little informal meet and greet on Thursday. So again, the relationship can be seamless between Monterey staff and Carmel staff, and that's in planning and building and public works and anybody else who has those interactions. So, but again, the chief has a new deputy fire marshal, Dave Brown, who had been the assistant chief for many years, and so this is kind of this new era of outreach and education for property owners and businesses to ensure fire safety. Mm-hmm.
We're also fortunate in the fact that in 2011, when we did the fire service contract with Monterey, that Chief Miller was here, and he actually did multiple council meetings, community meetings, reached out, and really presented it in a great way to make it seamless for our community. And in fact, I was here as well. I wasn't on the front lines with you, but I was paying attention. The transition was so seamless that at midnight on December 31st, 2011 and January 1st, 2012, when they became Monterey employees, our employees in the fire station, the community didn't notice. The fire engines still say Carmel Fire. They just have the employees had a different patch on their shoulder. We're employed by a different agency, but the service level improved through Monterey because of the resources and the personnel available, and also council's the response times that we are required to keep as a part of the contract. We report on those every month. You can see what our response times are, what our calls are, and that we're meeting those objectives set forth by council back in 2011 when we started this. So we're fortunate to have you back, Chief, and if we do move forward with this, to help with that transition.
Just kind of add something on to Molly's question there. I think, Chief, you actually at the strategic planning meeting had an opportunity to address the wildfire, education, and so that was good. And I think people, at that meeting got a feel for who you are and how positive this is going to be. So thanks.
Anything else?
How do you want to close it out?
I'm happy to. Yeah, no, thanks a lot for coming, guys, and explaining this one more time. I hope some people watch this via video and can grab on to what we're doing, and I hope that we can get behind this and make it happen. But thanks a lot for starting it up again.
Bobby, if
That's good.
anybody has any questions, you should contact.
Chief, if anybody out there has any questions, please don't hesitate to contact Chief Tomasi, and he can fill you in or at least get you to the right person that can answer that question. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
36 minutes, it's like a council meeting. Good. That's good coverage. You can come down for a walk.
Wearing those orange ones next door. Wear them out. Oh, is that what they are? Yeah.
Pretty close. They replaced all the framing in there.
Right. My kids are both in school